Well, hello again, everyone. If you're just joining us, my name's Anevay. I'm up here on the second floor of the exhibit if you're wondering where my voice is coming from. But you are all here at a great time. As you can see, our friends from our Otter Care team have just joined us to go ahead and distribute what we call a toy feeding. So we're seeing a special feeding for our otters today. A toy feed is special because, as you can see, our otters are getting toys today. Not only are we going to get a chance to see our adorable animals play with these toys, but this is also how we'll be feeding them for today, or for this time. These toys can actually be stuffed with our otters' foods. They'll be eating a tasty kind of three-course meal of shrimp, squid, and clam. Those can be hidden inside of those toys, challenging our otters to retrieve the yummy food from inside. In the wild, our otters eat invertebrates. These are animals without a backbone who do typically have a hard shell to protect themselves. So in the same way that they would forage and hunt for these hard-shelled animals, our otters are going to be practicing cracking open these toys in that same way. The aquarium is home to 5 female southern sea otters, all of who have been deemed non-releasable by the U.S. Department of Fish and Wildlife, and that's for different medical or behavioral reasons. On exhibit today, we have 4 of those 5 resident otters. Let me go ahead and introduce to you who you're seeing today. On exhibit, we have Kit, Ruby, Selka, and Ivy. On the far right-hand side, there playing with her toy is Ivy. She is our blondest exhibit otter. On the far left-hand side is Kit. She is our largest and longest otter. And in the middle, we have Selka and Ruby. Selka and Ruby are also fellow brunette residents here. A good way to tell them apart is by their size. Selka is our youngest exhibit otter, so she is the smallest. And Ruby is also our more chocolatey brown girly. We also see that our trainers are equipped with a bucket there that can be filled with some nice frozen treats. Ice blocks can help satisfy our girls' crunch cravings. In the wild, otters are tool users. They use objects like their strong jaws, hard teeth, or a rock to crack open those shells of the invertebrates that they eat. So having our ice for our girls helps satisfy that crunch craving they would get with those hard-shelled animals. Now you might notice as we're feeding our girls here with these toys that they're missing some of those hard-shelled animals here on exhibit. Now don't worry folks, they can still practice and eat those hard-shelled invertebrates behind the scenes, but there's a special reason we feed them these animals the way you see it here inside of these toys. You see, originally when we fed our girls their hard-shelled animals on exhibit, one of their favorite tools to use to crack them open was actually bringing them over to those windows and banging up against them. That's right, folks, they became quickly scratched up, and we've learned to feed them those animals and invertebrates with their shells behind the scenes. So they can still practice that tool using and foraging just like they would in the wild. A toy feed like we see here today is something we'd call enrichment. Enrichment keeps our otters mentally and physically stimulated, but also helps them practice their natural behaviors. As I mentioned, these toys, as they can be stuffed with their foods, this will challenge our otters to retrieve the yummy stuff inside, just like they would with a crab or an abalone. These adorable faces you're looking at are those of an apex predator. These top predators are so important to the habitats that they live in, they've earned themselves the name of a keystone species. That means these otters act as habitat regulators. They hunt the animals like abalones or sea urchins, which eat the kelp that grows into the kelp forest, supporting all of this amazing wildlife. Our otters have this important job of hunting for these animals, keeping their populations in balance, ensuring that the entire kelp forest is healthy and maintained, which is part of the reason these animals are so important to protect. Otters actually eat up to 25% of their body weight in one day. You might have noticed that they have a few different scheduled feedings today, and that's not the only time of day that they're fed. An otter eats that much food a day and relies on that high metabolism to keep themselves warm in the cold waters that they live in. Sea otters are marine mammals, but unlike other marine mammals you might have seen, like a whale or a sea lion, who have nice thick layers of fat called blubber to keep warm, Our otters do not. They rely on eating lots and lots of food a day, that high metabolism, and also maintaining their dense fur coats. Otters have the densest fur of any animal. They can actually have up to 1 million hairs per square inch. In people perspective, the average adult has about 100,000 hairs on top of their head. So in just a square inch of this otter's dense fur coat, you can squeeze about 10 times the hair on top of your head. This dense fur coat helps our otters trap their body heat, keeping warm again in the cold waters that they live in. So you might see our otters after they're done eating here, looking like they're giving themselves a nice full body scratch, giving their face a nice little rub. That is their grooming in action. So while it's adorable to watch, you're also seeing them perform one of those natural behaviors they rely on to keep themselves alive and warm in the habitats that they live in. That dense fur coat is actually part of the reason these otters, again, are so important to protect. They are actually considered an endangered species. Because of their dense fur coats, these species of southern sea otters were nearly hunted to extinction during the fur trade, down to just 50 individuals found not too far from here off the coast of Big Sur. From these 50 individuals, thanks to folks just like you who saw these adorable animals and decided that they needed protecting, they've made an incredible recovery to nearly about 3,000 individuals today. And this is an awesome example about how we can work together, placing these animals under the protection of the Marine Mammal Protection Act has made an incredible recovery for this threatened population. On exhibit like we see them today, our otters act as ambassadors for their species, teaching us what it means to be an otter. But behind the scenes, they have another very special job. As I mentioned, all 5 of our otters here are females who have been rescued and deemed non-releasable, but this is not where their connection to their wild counterparts ends. Our otters can act as foster moms in our Sea Otter Surrogacy Program, where they can be paired with wild pups who have been rescued and separated from their moms. Then our otters can take these pups behind the scenes where they're paired up to teach them everything they need to know to survive in the wild. Eventually, these pups can be released back out into their natural habitats. If you'd like to learn more about that Sea Otter Surrogacy Program, I invite you to swing by our auditorium at 2 o'clock for our auditorium program, Luna, a sea otter story. It follows the story of an adorable otter pup named Luna and her adventure through that program. With that being said, it does look like our otter care team has wrapped up with today's feeding. But again, my name is Anevay. I'm up here on the 2nd floor of the exhibit. Feel free to come and find me if you have any otter questions. And if you're continuing on your adventure for today, I hope you all have an utterly fantastic day here at the Monterey Bay Aquarium.